Hello, and welcome to the Insider's Guide to VantagePoint. This tutorial describes VantagePoint options. During this tutorial, you will learn how to set the number of futures contracts that are displayed in the markets tree, set the range of data that VantagePoint uses when it creates a chart or report, set the default contract to open, and set VantagePoint to renew its license manually instead of automatically. First, you must close any open portfolio before you can access the VantagePoint options screen. Then, click File on the main menu, and then Options on the drop-down menu. The next screen that appears is called VantagePoint Intermarket Analysis Software Options. Let's take a look at the settings on the General tab. The data begin date controls how much data VantagePoint analyzes each time it opens a chart or report. And by default, VantagePoint will analyze 2 years of data each time it creates a chart or report, but this data range can be changed. And changing the data begin date has a huge influence on how much time is required for VantagePoint to open up charts and reports. And if you open up large portfolios or many individual charts or reports, changing this date makes a noticeable difference. So the closer this data begin date is to today's date, the less time is required for VantagePoint to open up charts or reports. But when you set this date for earlier and use more historical data in this process, it takes much more time to open up charts and reports. To change the data begin date, click the down arrow to the right of the box, and on the calendar screen, click the arrow that points to the right to advance the date, or click the arrow on the left to go to an earlier date. After selecting the desired month and year, left click on the date, the desired date. This clears the calendar screen and puts the new data begin date in the box. Next, let's take a look at limit the contracts displayed in the market tree. By default, VantagePoint sets the contract begin date and contract end date so the market tree displays 4 years of futures contracts. However, you can change the contract end date and display more or less contracts by clicking the down arrow to the right of the box. And then, just like we did in the previous segment, you would use the arrows to scroll through the calendar and then select the appropriate month and date. Now you'll notice that the contract begin date is automatically linked to the data begin date, and it's highly advisable to keep these dates in sync. However, you can unlink the dates, and to do that, click in the box to the left of Automatically Link Contract Begin Date to remove the check mark, and then you can change the data begin date by clicking the down arrow to the right of the box and then scrolling through the calendar and then selecting the new desired date. However, I'm going to put the check mark back in the box because this is the preferred setting. The maximum tabs allowed to open option controls how many charts and reports VantagePoint will open at one time. Although the default number, 200, will be appropriate for the majority of our customers, this number can be changed. To change the number, either click on the upward pointing arrow to increase the number, or the downward pointing arrow to decrease the number. The default contract to open option applies to futures contracts. And you can set VantagePoint to open the current contract by default, or the cash, or continuous contract. And finally, we reach the option for market price adjustments notification. Sometimes an exchange or data provider may find it necessary to issue a correction to the actual data, and this change in actual data can change the VantagePoint predictions. By default, VantagePoint detects all changes in actual data, but will not display a warning message that indicates a change has been made. That's the default setting. Ignore adjustments that are less than 0% of the previous price. However, you can change this setting so that VantagePoint will display a message indicating that data in a certain market has changed, using this percentage as its threshold. To change the percentage, click the arrow to the right of the box until the desired percent is reached. That completes our look at the options on the General tab. Click on the Reactivation tab. VantagePoint requires activation the first time it is run and must be reactivated at regular intervals after that. By default, VantagePoint is set up to automatically reactivate over the internet. However, you can change this setting so that you must reactivate manually. However, we strongly recommend not doing that and allowing VantagePoint to reactivate automatically. In this example, you'll see that automatically reactivate and don't show status notifications is not available for me to remove the check mark. This really indicates that my copy of VantagePoint is not registered. But after I register this copy of VantagePoint, this option will become available and I can left click in the box to remove the check mark. However, if I do this, this means that I must manually reactivate VantagePoint. And remember, it is highly recommended that you not remove this option and allow VantagePoint to renew its activation automatically over the internet. And that completes our look at the VantagePoint Intermarket Analysis software options. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. Thank you for watching. Please visit the Market Technologies Learning Center for additional tutorials.